PIVX is a cryptocurrency that focuses on private, instant, verified transactions, hence the name, as we're about to discover. I had a great conversation with three members of their team about the history of PIVX, privacy, and I mean real privacy, not just anonymity, and governance, which is how they work together as a team and how the greater PIVX community as a whole interacts and makes decisions. So here's Spock, snappysnap, and cryptosi to tell you more about PIVX. Enjoy. Well, welcome. I guess the first question is, what's the story behind the beginning of PIVX? And am I pronouncing that correctly? That's how I've always said it in my head, but I've never heard anyone say it out loud, actually. So what's the story behind it, and what particular problem was it trying to solve? Kind of what angle do you have on the cryptocurrency world?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. This is Brian Snappy. I spoke with one of the co-founders of PIVX, 7hacks. So there were basically two guys at the very beginning. They're still very involved with the project. And when I asked him, "Hey, can you give me a quick rundown and overview of what was going through your mind back when you launched it?" He first started talking about this coin, or at least this movement endeavor, in August of 2015, and had a vision of creating a coin community, but basically a technology in the blockchain space, for the sole purpose of giving people a way to transfer a store of value, right? Very simple, in an anonymous and untraceable fashion. So very, very specific. This is what the target mission was, and at that point, it was named Darknet. So when it was pushed out into BTC Talk and officially launched, it was launched under the name Darknet. And obviously, we are not quite there yet in terms of meeting his vision for that anonymous, untraceable fashion, but that's a lot of what the devs, Spock will talk about that. That's what they're working on right now. And yeah, the community and the coin itself has grown tremendously over the past year. So, but that's the origins, as it were, of PIVX. And yeah.
All right. So interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned the whole goal from day one was privacy. What kind of methods is PIVX using to create that privacy? More so than the first generation coins.
Okay, so PIVX is actually more like a third generation coin. So I would say Dash is a second generation one. And basically PIVX cloned the source code tree from Dash. So we basically got Dash's privacy methodology, and that's based on a technology which is similar to Bitcoin's CoinJoin. So it's a mixing process where you basically send your coins to a masternode, and it's mixed along with other people. And so it's done in such a way that it'll be like just mixing a lot of dollar bills. You wouldn't, and then grabbing some out of that, you wouldn't know who they originally came from. So some people don't see this as the most anonymous way. It's not very kind of cryptology anonymous, and one of the issues with it is that basically, if there's only 2 or 3 people mixing at the time, it's much easier to kind of trace back to who's doing the mixing. So there's a number of issues with it. So because of that, and we looked at some of the newer technologies, and we decided to adopt the zero coin protocol, which is more of a cryptological kind of anonymity. Excuse me. So that's where we're going to going forward. And there is coins doing zero coin already. The main one being Zcoin. So we're basically cloning their code and some other open source code. And we hope we can do it in a way that won't have some of the issues associated with Zcoin. One which is just syncing to the latest blockchain can take days or weeks and just really, really slow. So we're going to try to take advantage of our masternode network to help speed up this process as well. So we're pretty excited about. We're actually some of the devs are working on this now, and so so this is more like a third generation type of privacy that we'll have once we get that in.
Okay, great. Could you go a little bit more into explaining what these masternodes are? I know that's a big new thing coming out. The masternodes and how that relates to things like staking and all this new stuff you've got coming out.
Sure. So the masternodes were something else inherited from Dash as well. And originally they were set up for a couple of purposes. One was to actually do the mixing, so for the privacy. And another is to support instant send, which is a way of getting transactions to be locked in immediately in less than a second. So so those are things that once we cloned from Dash, that we got those features. Sorry. Okay, you're asking about staking versus mining or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I was just trying to get a big, an overview of how that all works in comparison. What people might be more familiar with.
Okay. So one of the main differences from PIVX from Dash is that Dash is based on proof of work, like Bitcoin. So PIVX was originally done as a proof of work coin for a certain phase, and then it transitioned to proof of stake. So we're now 100% proof of stake, which means that anyone who has a node on the network and they have some PIVX coins, they stake. And what that basically means is they're the ones creating the next block in the chain, which is similar to what proof of work does with miners. But you do it by artifact that you have PIVX coins and you're on the network. So rather than like a lot of CPU power to hash and to solve problems to get the next block, you just need a fairly basic computer and a certain amount of PIVX. And the more PIVX you have, the more likely you will be to create the next block. So so basically, when the the next block is staked, you'll get a reward for that, and part of that reward goes to the masternodes. So the masternodes are not part of the staking or minting. They are really for other purposes on the network, which is, like I said, the privacy and the instant send, and also for governance at the moment. So they handle taking in the votes and tallying up the votes and keeping track of all those kind of things. So, and for that purpose, they do get rewarded. So they do not need to stake, but they will get parts of the reward as well.
So, so you mentioned that anybody with just their CPU can do the staking. So, what exactly is happening in that process? Like, what is their computer actually doing?
Well, there is a difficulty. So they do have to solve a bit of a math problem, but it's really based on how much PIVX you have. So you'll have a certain amount of coins, and the more coins you have, kind of the less the difficulty will be. And so you'll still end up competing with other stakers to create that next block. But there's various parts to that proof of stake. I don't really want to go into the details, but it depends on how old the coins are, and it depends since the last time you staked, some of these kind of things. So given that, you have a certain probability of getting a reward. So I think if you have probably 10,000 PIVX, you're going to get a reward probably every day, or maybe even less than that. If you go down to 1,000, maybe it's every week. So it's just kind of a probability game. So there's a certain amount of randomness in there as well. So yeah, I think does that explain it okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
I was going to jump in real quick too. So one of the other differences between PIVX and some other coins is the way that the reward is split. So in a lot of the traditional masternode setups, that are proof of work, the rewards going, it's okay, it's given straight down the middle, it's split between masternodes and the miners. What the devs did in PIVX is they put it onto, they call it the seesaw algorithm, right? So the whole why did they do this? They're trying to maintain an equilibrium between people who have masternodes, like the number of masternodes, and then the number of coins in circulation. So what happens is every block reward, there's an amount of PIVX, and that gets split based on a ratio of how many masternodes there are compared to the number of coins being staked, right? So if you have a situation arises where all of a sudden you have a ton of people trying to put coins into a masternode, right? So from a privacy and from a network security, like, yeah, there's that aspect that's going up, but what happens is now you don't have a ton of coins in supply, right? They're all being locked away into a masternode. So with each block reward, more of that reward is going to be going to people who are involved in staking, right? And then the inverse is if people don't have their coins into masternodes, and there's a low number of masternodes, and there's a lot of people staking, then more of that block reward is going to go to people who are actually putting their coins into a masternode and securing the network that way. So what tends to happen is that's why they call it the seesaw, is it's this fluctuating ratio, every block reward based on that ratio. So
okay. Yeah, and also that helps to secure the network, because you either don't end up with too many masternodes or not, or too many stakers.
Yeah.
So you get a nice balance. Because they both provide services, so you want some kind of mix rather than to be dominated by one type over the other.
Right.
Sorry, can I jump in quickly as well? Also, from my point of view, which I kind of focus on the governance aspect. Also, from a governance aspect, it's never a good thing if the people who are currently in power have got the means to generate more power for themselves. So what the seesaw algorithm does is it means that to carry on buying more and more masternodes so that you can secure more and more votes, which I guess means I should really explain how the voting system works. But I'll assume that we understand how the voting system works, but to buy more and more votes, your masternodes earning you more and more rewards, and with that money, you're then setting up more and more masternodes. What the seesaw algorithm does is it means that the rewards that you're getting once the masternodes reach a certain point are dropping off, and then they will drop off to a point where the stakers are earning just as much as the masternodes. So any kind of big whale coming from any other currency to come into PIVX won't be able to just buy an infinite amount of masternodes without it actually costing them money. So the money that they could have or should be making from staking, they'll be losing just because they want to try and gain control of our governance system. And that was the eureka moment that actually brought me to PIVX. That's what brought me across, because there's no other coin that has taken or factored that into account so that the governance isn't in that way skewed.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, I think this would be a good point to segue. Could you talk a little bit about the governance, how that voting system works?
Right, okay. My name's Carl, and I'm known as cryptosi or cryptosi. And my main role is to help with designing the governance. So what we've got is a system which, from a philosophical standpoint, is probably not ideal, but it's about the best that you can get within cryptocurrency today, where your votes are kind of weighted based on how much of the currency you hold. So it's kind of like how shareholders would vote within a company, which I think is okay, because obviously cryptocurrency is voluntary. So pounds or euros or dollars, which by their very nature are mandatory. You can't decide to just make a new pound, or you could if you wanted to, but you'd soon find yourself in prison. So what we've got is something which uh, is probably not as perfect or as idealistic as democracy, but it does work. Um, our voting system works. All right. So if you've got a masternode currently, if you've got a masternode, then every masternode gets one vote. And there are two problems with this, which we're aiming to solve within our next iteration of governance. But at the moment, each single masternode gets a vote. So a person with 5 masternodes, which will cost them 50,000 PIV, today's price about, I think, $60,000. So it's not cheap. We'll have 5 individual votes, which they can vote on different proposals. The proposals can be made by anybody, so you don't even have to own any. Well, actually, yeah, you do have to own PIV, but anybody is free to join. So there's no membership, there's no sign up, there's no pre-proposal vetting, there's nothing like that. Nobody can tell you you're not allowed to vote. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are in the world, or what exactly it is you want to bring to the table. If you wanted to come forward with a proposal, let's say to build a video channel or a YouTube channel specifically for PIVX, where you have interviews with other people from cryptocurrency and you share your knowledge of finance with them, you could put a proposal like that forward. It would cost you at the moment 50 PIV to put that forward. We're looking at that because at the moment the argument is, well, 50 PIV is not a lot to people in the Western world. In other parts of the world, it may well be quite a lot. So does it then put them out? And we're trying to find workarounds for that, because I don't think changing it is the best way. Spock will probably be able to tell you better, but I think changing it is a lot more hassle than it's worth. I think it's better to find a workaround. So anyway, once you've got your 50 PIV, you put your proposal forward, it goes forward to the blockchain, and all the masternode owners can see it. They can see your proposal, they can look at your links or whatever it is you put in the proposal, and they can make their mind up with a yes or a no. Along with your proposal, and it's not mandatory that you do this, but along with your proposal, you could set an amount of PIV that you want to be paid. So if you want to set up your YouTube channel, you could say, okay, I'm going to do this YouTube channel for 3 months, and every month I want to be paid 1,000 PIV for my services. If the masternode owners decide that's a good idea, then they'll vote yes. If the masternode owners decide it's a bad idea, then they'll vote no. You have to have a certain amount of masternode owners say yes, which will in turn allow you to then take hold of those funds and go and do whatever it is you want to do. This, to my mind, is probably about where the second generation of cryptocurrency is. I think Spock could elaborate on that, but I think that's about crypto 2.0, and that's how our governance system works at the moment. However, there was a proposal that's been put through that has been passed already, which says that in essence, it asks the masternode owners if they would like to diversify their power, in a way to give up quite a large chunk of their power, so that anybody who holds any amount of PIV will also be able to vote. Now, the exact intricacies of how that will work, or in fact, if it can work, are yet to be decided, but it's one of the things that you can do, because you don't have to, not every single proposal has to have a monetary value. So you can have a proposal which in essence just says, we would like our currency to head in this direction. And I think that's a very, very important thing, because I've personally been involved in other currencies where they've said, okay, we're going to keep privacy as the #1 thing, and then the currency's reached 100 million in market cap, and all of a sudden these vulturous financial types have descended upon the project and decided, okay, maybe privacy is not so good for adoption because banks don't like it. If we got rid of privacy, market cap. Let's just get rid of privacy. And all of a sudden, a project that was there to do one thing becomes a project that's there just to make money. I think that's one of the main strengths that PIVX has at the moment, is that we're using the technology not only just to diversify the funds, but also to steer the direction of the coin.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, that whole voting process. So does everything, is the entire roadmap, whether it's development, what code developers are writing, to and branding, does that all go through that voting process?
No, not everything, because that would be too time consuming. So when we were a smaller crypto, was we used what's known as the swarm methodology. I think what will probably be best, I'll give a brief breakdown, but what we could probably do is put like a link in the description. But there's this methodology which kind of says, it was used a lot by activists in Northern Europe. And what it basically says is that if you've got a group of trusted people, and the group is, say, a group of 100 people, if 3 of the trusted members decide that something is a good thing to do, then those 3 don't have to look up the chain of command to decide if it's a good thing to do. Those 3 just get up and they can just go and do it. So what had happened when we was doing the rebranding was the first time we really started to use the swarm methodology, was that a few people decided, okay, we'll get this company to do the rebrand and we'll put this money forward, and then we'll poll people on their opinions. And we've done it all within Slack. We didn't even use the masternodes for any of this. We've done it all within Slack. We'll poll everybody. We'll send out a tweet and we'll say to everybody, we're asking your opinion on the brand name, the logo design, and the color, I believe it was. I was outvoted every step of the way, which is upsetting, or it was really upsetting at the time, but now I've come to actually like the logo, and I like the name, and I like the color. But yeah, so that's the way we've done it. It was all done in a very nimble way. So for some things, waiting a whole month for a super block is not the best idea. Sometimes some things we can just pick up and do within smaller sections of the community, and we've got a lot of projects like that where people have just gotten up and said, okay, we need to build a store to sell PIVX merchandise and to build a marketplace for PIVX. Let's just get it done. And then what would end up happening is, once it's done, to make it actually become an official part of the currency, we can then poll the masternodes, or the masternodes and stakeholders, depending on what point in our life we are. And then we'll say, okay, we want to make this now official. If the masternode owners turn around and say, yes, we like what you've done, it can become official, then it becomes official. Otherwise, it will just stay as a person's individual project.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'll definitely add a link for that swarm methodology. That sounds really, really useful in a lot of applications.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you specifically mentioned the branding. One thing when I was researching PIVX is that I noticed, more so than most tech problems, in most tech projects, developers are gods and everything else is kind of a last minute, whatever, throw it together. With the PIVX community, it seems like there's a whole lot more thought put into some of the non-development roles, like the branding people, marketing, project management, things like that, or I guess what you guys would call governance and all that kind of thing. Is that a conscious decision made in your group, or did that just kind of organically evolve, or how does that all work out?
Yes and yes. So, from my experience being in PIVX and seeing the community and seeing the project, right? So this thing grow, right? It is a cryptocurrency, it is a community, it is a project, and it's within this sector. There was a conscious effort. So little history, right? So when members of the community who were supporting the coin and being involved said, "Hey, I think we need to do a rebrand," right? Like darknet, it's not vibing. I mean, it vibes with some demographics. Totally get that. For a bigger, what do we want to do, right? Who are we? What is this coin about? Is it about a dark net? Not really. So how are we going to pivot this thing and then bring it to market? And so talking to, as you said, the developers who tend to be the top of a pyramid in most of these coins and communities, at that point just saying, hey, would you guys be willing just to say, here, take the lead, right? Like, we're going to rebrand. We're gonna change the name, the branding, what the feel of the coin is, what our mission is. And they said, yeah, go for it. Like, that's not our wheelhouse. So that right away is nice to have that sort of core aspect of a, even development team going, you know what, you guys do this much better than we do. Go for it, right? Like, so that inherent trust has been seeded, at least from my perspective, from very early on in the project. And what happens, right? So then what happens is now people are empowered to go, okay, wow, yep, let's go do this. Boom, okay, let's do it in a very methodical governance manner, asking the community, getting votes, getting input, boom, change that. And that cycle has just continued along, again, with the swarm methodology of, look, if there's something that you feel, probably 10 other people are going to be feeling it as well. Vocalize it, see who's around, see if there's a connection, and then go off and go. And so what that's allowed is within this project and an endeavor, you have these pockets, right, of clusters of people that aggregate together around a certain, mission or focus or creed or technology and go, all right, let's go do it. So you have community managers, right? You got somebody, like Matthias or myself or Grant or, Lokesh or Matt Dubb, who's coming in, and because they have an ability just to be themselves, boom, now they're taking on that role themselves, right? And so they're putting the energy back in all on their own accord. They're not being paid for it. It's just, hey, like, yeah, this is something I want to be part of. Why? Bigger vision. I have an ability to, flex my energy and get involved. So it's allowed that. It's interesting because it's a framework with not a lot of defined parameters, right? Here's the framework. Here's our creed. Here's our manifesto of how we treat one another. Here's where our goals are. Here's where we're going. You have complete freedom within there, right? So that's allowed I will say, the non-tech type people to come in and really get involved because there's a space for them to. Where in a lot of crypto projects, again, it's very, very tech oriented. This is what it has to, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's very different from what PIVX is organically kind of grown into. So,
yeah, that sounds great.
Let me add to that a little bit too.
Sure.
So I was involved in a couple of projects before this, not really as a core team developer or anything, but just partly developing, partly part of the community. And I saw that either the developers or what was called the core team had way too much power, and they became kind of like little tyrannies. So one coin in particular, I mean, it was really just done by one developer, and he had complete control over everything. And the other was more of like a core team. And so, I looked around, and I mean, two things kind of got me about PIVX. One was just the technology of the coin and how it had been derived from Dash and so forth. But the other really important point was that there was this community there, and we were going towards a community inclusive type governance for the coin. So that was really attractive as a developer, and that it's not going to end up being a tyranny kind of situation, or the developers are just going to do what they want and kind of drag everyone else around. So yeah, so that was what brought me into it. And like I said, it doesn't have that kind of feeling of just one small group dictating everything. It is more broad, and new people come in and they can be just as important to the future of the coin as people that have been there like a year or less.
All right, so I think I've got a pretty good understanding now of what PIVX is, where it came from. Could you talk a little bit about current things that are currently on the roadmap? You mentioned that the privacy aspect is continuing to mature. What kind of other things can we expect from the PIVX team in the next year?
So our two main areas of focus are Adopt and Zero Coin, and which we're working on at the moment. And the other is the inclusive governance, which will allow anybody to vote. So we actually have kind of like two groups of developers. So one group is working on zero coin, and there's another group that are working on the governance issue. And as part of once those things come along, we'll be working on mobile wallets as well. So because those changes are fairly significant, it doesn't make sense for us to really put too much effort into a mobile wallet right now, because they'll end up changing significantly. So there's other things on the roadmap. We have a site with the roadmap and various other aspects, but just kind of as devs, we try to focus on the next one or two and see how that goes before we get too involved in the things after that. So if Brian or Cryptosi want to add to other things that I haven't mentioned, I'll let them. But I think from my point of view.
Yeah, this is what's fun because and this is actually, I think, Cryptosi can jump in on the other aspects. The roadmap we typically think of from a development of like the code, the core, the coin. So that technological roadmap, the stuff as Spock was just mentioning is awesome. It's so sweet to already hear and know that those projects are underway. From the community public facing aspects of the coin and of the community, so there's quite a few community sponsored projects underway. One is, as Carl mentioned, a multi-vendor store where PIVX will be the main currency within the system. So again, you as an individual can come in as a vendor, put your wares up for sale, and then use PIVX to transact. So that's already underway. We're finalizing some of the details right now with that. The other is more of call it PIVX Live. So be readily accessible to the community, not just through YouTube, but through an actual, public facing site. So you'll have interviews, tutorials, live hangout links. So like there's trading hangouts that happen 24/7 basically within PIVX. So if anybody can come in, you're not even in Slack, boom, you find the page, you can go in. And then we're also going to start working on some vlogs, community members just talking about PIVX and what they're doing and what's going on. Again, that public facing. We're very preliminary with working with some nonprofits as well. Again, our core resonance about, we're about community, we're about governance, we're about that fair and that privacy aspect. We're also human, right? So there's a lot that's been given to us in looking at those individuals who are reaching others that we'll never reach, right, on our own. So how are we able to be of use to them? Not just like, okay, we're doing this for ourselves and we're doing this for the betterment of our children because why? We want a better governance, we want a better economy, we want better this. Well, there's also real tangible things that we can be doing now with our energies. Include PIVX, but also are just the fact that we're connecting as humans. So we're talking with some nonprofits, working with them specifically to see how we can support them. Because let's face it too, right? There's almost 5,000 Pivians in our Slack channel, right? There's a lot of people who have, a free hour or two a week and would, if they knew about a project or knew, hey, I can help code or I can help do this or I can help market or I can help talk about it, would jump in it. So this is where we're also saying there's a robustness to the energy that has been afforded PIVX from a community standpoint. How can we leverage this to be of, out facing? And let's face it too, the flip of, in turn, that helps the awareness of PIVX go out. So those are a few of them that are probably will be coming out shortly. There's a couple more announcements coming out about integrations, PIVX into some other applications for bill pays and other technologies. So.
Great. So if someone sees this and they want to be one of those people given an hour or two a week, and they have a great idea and they think they want to get it out there to the PIVX community, what's the best way to get a hold and to be a part of that community?
Yeah. So two ways. One would definitely be coming to Slack. So that's slack.pivx.org. We can give the hyperlink. The other would be as well, pop into the forums. Our Slack conversations get chewed up so fast because there are so many members, which we're We're working on that too, a whole nother suite and ecosphere for the community to be part of where the history doesn't get deleted. The other, is the forum. So you can go in, post questions into the forum, say, hey, I've got an idea, might need some support here. That's another great way. So.
Yeah, also, just to say about with the roadmap, another thing that we have to take into account is that because we've got our governance system as it is, which is a budget, it doubles up as a budget, there are people I know for a fact that are like ready to start working on things like the mobile wallet and the hardware wallet and other things like that, which will be useful. So even our core devs, they end up being not our only developers, because anybody can come in and say, okay, look, I can move this into such and such hardware wallet, and it's going to cost so much. Put the proposal through, within a month, it's there. So there are loads of things that will be on a roadmap that you probably won't get from us three guys, because there's a hell of a lot happening. So what we really try to do is get everybody to come into Slack, speak with everybody, go onto the forums and put their proposals forward there in advance so that other community members can get together with them and help them to bring their idea forward, bring their timelines forward as well.
So that's what PIVX is all about. Make sure to check out pivx.org for more information. That's PIVX.org. I can tell you from personal experience that their Slack channel is the best way to get a hold of the team and find out what's going on. All the links they mentioned are in the description of this video. Thanks again to Spock, snappysnap, and Cryptosi from PIVX. While you're here at this channel, check out a few more interviews all about the world of cryptocurrency. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.